Welcome back. In this final module, we're bringing all the pieces together. We've talked about how to think visually, how to generate ideas, and how to work with others using visuals. Now, we'll apply these skills to a practical and important task: visual thinking for problem solving and decision making. We'll explore how to frame problems visually, use visual models to explore solutions, and visualize pros and cons to make better choices. This isn't just about drawing, it's about seeing problems and opportunities in a completely new light. Before you can solve a problem, you have to understand it. And a surprising number of problems are poorly defined from the start. They're often presented as a jumble of symptoms, opinions, and assumptions. Trying to tackle such a vague problem is like trying to navigate a dense fog. You might be moving, but you don't really know where you're going. Visual thinking provides a way to cut through that fog and get a clear picture of what's really going on. It's a process of externalizing the problem, turning an internal confusion into a shared, tangible artifact. One of the most effective ways to frame a problem visually is by creating a problem map. A problem map is a type of concept map or system diagram that focuses specifically on the relationships and dependencies within a problem. Instead of starting with a solution, you start with the problem itself, placing it in the center of a page. From there, you branch out, identifying all the contributing factors, the people involved, the timeline, the risks, and the resources available. For example, if the problem is low customer retention, your map might have branches for poor onboarding experience, customer service issues, product bugs, and competitor pricing. As you map these out, you can draw arrows showing how one factor influences another. A bug in the product, for instance, might lead to a poor customer experience, which in turn leads to a customer support ticket and ultimately to them leaving. This process forces a thorough exploration of the problem's roots and its ripple effects. This practice may suggest that a problem isn't a single issue, but rather a complex system. When you look at a problem this way, a quick fix might not be the best answer. You might realize that what you thought was the main issue, the product bugs, is actually a symptom of a deeper, systemic problem, like a lack of communication between the engineering and quality assurance teams. Seeing the problem laid out visually can reveal these hidden relationships and help you focus your efforts on the root cause rather than just treating the symptoms. It's like a doctor using an X-ray to see a broken bone instead of just guessing from the swelling. The visual provides a diagnostic clarity that a verbal description often lacks. Another powerful technique is to visualize the problem from a different perspective. A what-if scenario map can be very helpful here. You can draw a central box representing the current situation and then branch out with different scenarios. What if we increased the price? Or what if we changed our marketing message? For each branch, you can draw the likely consequences, both good and bad. This is particularly useful for problems with uncertain outcomes. It allows a team to play with different possibilities in a low-risk environment, to visually explore the potential paths forward without committing to any of them. This kind of visual exploration can reduce fear of the unknown and make a decision seem less like a gamble and more like a calculated move. Finally, you can use journey maps to frame problems that involve a user or customer experience. A customer journey map is a visual representation of a customer's entire experience with a product or service. You can map out their actions, thoughts, and feelings at each stage, from initial awareness to post-purchase support. If your problem is, say, a high rate of shopping cart abandonment on an e-commerce site, you can create a journey map of a typical user's path. As you draw it, you might discover a point where the user gets confused or frustrated. Maybe it's the page where they have to create an account, or the one where shipping costs are revealed. By visualizing the user's emotional state, perhaps with a simple line graph that dips into negative territory, you can pinpoint exactly where the problem lies and where to focus your efforts. This moves the discussion from a vague complaint, "Our cart abandonment rate is too high," to a specific, tangible problem. our users are frustrated with the mandatory account creation step. Once you've framed the problem, the next step is to explore potential solutions. This is where visual models really shine. A verbal description of a solution, no matter how detailed, can still leave room for misinterpretation. A visual model, however, provides a clear, shared mental image. It allows you to build, test, and refine ideas without the cost and time of actual implementation. One of the most common and effective visual models for solutions is a process flow chart. We've touched on this before, but it's worth revisiting in the context of solutions. Let's say you're trying to improve the process for handling customer complaints. You can draw a flowchart of the proposed new process. Start with a box for customer complaint, then add a box for the first action, perhaps automated response sent. Then you can add a decision diamond. Is it a technical issue? If yes, an arrow goes to assigned to tech support. If no, an arrow goes to assigned to customer service. This visual representation makes the proposed process explicit and easy to critique. A team member might look at the diagram and say, "Wait, what happens if the customer doesn't respond to the automated email?" Or, "This looks like it's creating a bottleneck at the tech support stage." These questions are much easier to ask and answer when you have a visual model in front of you. It's a way of running a virtual test on your solution before you actually build anything. Another powerful technique is storyboarding. While we usually associate storyboards with filmmaking, they are incredibly useful for visualizing a solution that involves a sequence of actions or a user experience. Let's say your problem is that a new software feature is too complex for users. You can create a storyboard showing a user interacting with the new feature panel by panel. In the first panel, the user is looking at the screen, looking confused. In the second, they click the wrong button. In the third, they get an error message. By visualizing this painful experience, you can identify exactly where the design needs to be simplified or clarified. It's a way of empathizing with the user and seeing the solution from their perspective, something that's difficult to do with a written spec document. For more complex, systemic solutions, you can create a system map. A system map is like a concept map, but it's used to model a new hypothetical system. Let's say you're proposing a new business model. You can draw a system map with all the key players, customers, suppliers, partners, and employees, and show how money, information, and products flow between them. You can use different colors or icons to represent different types of flows. This visual model can help you spot potential flaws in your business model. For instance, you might realize that a certain part of the system is too reliant on a single supplier, which could be a major risk. A system map allows you to see the entire ecosystem of your solution and understand how all the pieces fit together. It appears to provide a level of holistic understanding that is hard to achieve with a spreadsheet or a verbal pitch alone. Finally, for creative problems, you might explore solutions through metaphorical mapping. This involves representing your solution with a metaphor. If you're solving a problem with communication, for example, you might represent your solution as a bridge between two islands. The components of your solution, a new communication tool, a new meeting format, could be represented as the girders, cables, and road of the bridge. This can be a fun and creative way to explore ideas. It can spark new insights that you might not have had otherwise. The metaphor becomes a frame for the solution, allowing you to discuss it in a new and often more imaginative way. The danger, of course, is that the metaphor may be misleading or too specific to a single perspective. It's a tool for creative exploration, not necessarily for rigorous final analysis. Every decision, big or small, has trade-offs. We weigh the good against the bad, the benefits against the risks. This is often an internal mental process, but externalizing it can lead to more objective and informed decisions. Visualizing pros and cons is a simple but powerful technique that helps you see the whole picture at a glance and move past emotional biases. The most basic method is the classic T chart. You draw a large T on a page. On one side you write pros, and on the other you write cons. As you and your team discuss a potential decision, you simply list the points on the appropriate side. While simple, the physical act of writing down each point makes it more tangible. It prevents a good argument from being dismissed or a bad one from being forgotten. For example, if you're deciding between two software vendors, the T-chart might have pros for vendor A, lower cost, better support, and cons, fewer features, less scalability. Vendor B might have the opposite. At the end, you have a clear side-by-side comparison. To add a bit more sophistication, you can use weighted matrices. This is a more quantitative approach, but it's still highly visual. You create a table with your decision criteria listed down the side, e.g., cost, ease of use, security, support, and your options listed across the top. Then you can assign a weight to each criterion based on its importance. Cost, for example, might be a more important factor than ease of use, so you give it a higher weight, say 5 out of 5. Then you score each option against each criterion. For example, vendor A gets a 3 for cost, a 4 for ease of use. You can then multiply the score by the weight to get a weighted score for each option. The visual table makes it easy to see which option comes out on top. The process itself forces you to be explicit about what matters most to you, which is an important step in any difficult decision. The critique, of course, is that the numbers can give an illusion of objectivity when the weights and scores themselves are often subjective. It's important to remember that this is a tool to aid discussion, not a magic formula for the right answer. Another method, which is more qualitative and feels a bit more natural, is the decision mind map. You place the decision in the center of the page. From there, you branch out with the various options you are considering. From each option, you branch out again, with one branch for the positive consequences and another for the negative ones. You can use green branches for the pros and red branches for the cons, making the visual balance immediately apparent. This method feels less rigid than a T-chart and allows for a more nuanced exploration. You can add notes, questions, and even small sketches to each point. It's a more organic way to capture the complexity of a decision and the associated feelings and thoughts that go along with it. A decision mind map can often reveal emotional factors that might not fit into a neat T-chart or weighted matrix. For a group setting, a powerful visualization for pros and cons is the visual spectrum or gradient. You draw a long horizontal line on a whiteboard. At one end, you write least risky, and at the other, you write most risky. As a group discusses different options, you place sticky notes representing each option along the line based on how risky the group perceives it to be. You can then do the same thing for least costly to most costly or lowest impact to highest impact. This creates a powerful visual representation of the trade-offs. The group can literally see where an option falls on multiple axes. This often sparks new insights. A team might discover that the safest option is also the one with the lowest potential reward, prompting them to reconsider a riskier but potentially more valuable path. It's a way of moving from a binary good or bad decision to a more nuanced, multi-dimensional one. In the end, all these visual methods for problem solving and decision making have a common goal: to externalize and objectify the process. They take a messy, confusing jumble of thoughts and feelings and turn it into a clear, understandable picture. They allow us to see what we're thinking, to share it with others, and to make more informed choices. The great thing is that you don't need a fancy software program or a degree in design to do this. All you need is a pen, some paper, and the willingness to let your thoughts take a visual form. Welcome back. For this lesson, we're going to put our visual thinking skills to work in a very practical and important area: enhancing presentations and reports. It's one thing to think visually for yourself, but it's another entirely to use those skills to communicate effectively with others. We'll explore how to take those dense, text-heavy slides and turn them into compelling visual stories. We'll also talk about how to make written reports more engaging and easier to understand by weaving in visual elements. This is about making your message stick. We've all been there. You're sitting in a meeting, staring at a slide filled with bullet points, 10, maybe 15 lines of text with a title that tells you almost nothing. The presenter reads each point aloud, and your mind starts to wander. It's a painful experience for everyone involved. The presenter is trying to convey a lot of information, but the format itself is fighting against them. The audience, meanwhile, is trying to process a wall of text while listening to someone talk. It's a cognitive overload, and it almost always leads to disengagement. The core problem here is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a slide is for. A slide isn't a teleprompter or a document, it's a visual aid. Its purpose is to support what you're saying, not to be the star of the show. Your voice, your story, your presence, that's the star. The slide is the sidekick, and a good sidekick makes the hero look good. So, how do we transform those dreadful, text-heavy slides? The first step is to recognize that a single slide should, ideally, convey a single idea. If you have a slide with 5 bullet points, you may be trying to communicate 5 different ideas at once. Each of those points is likely deserving of its own slide, its own moment in the spotlight. Break them up. Take that one massive slide and turn it into 5 simpler, more focused ones. This may seem like more work, and it might mean a longer slide deck, but your audience will thank you for it. They'll be able to focus on one idea at a time, and you'll have the space to explain each one properly. Once you have a single idea per slide, the next step is to find the right visual to represent that idea. This is where your visual thinking skills come into play. What is the core concept you're trying to get across? Is it a process, a comparison, a relationship, a metaphor? Let's say your text-heavy slide is about a 3-step customer onboarding process. Instead of 3 bullet points, why not use a simple flowchart? Draw a box for sign up, an arrow to onboarding tutorial, and another arrow to first successful action. You can use a different icon for each step, a pencil for sign up, a light bulb for the tutorial, a check mark for the successful action. Now, instead of reading a list, your audience sees a simple, clear, visual journey. They instantly grasp the flow and can see how the steps connect. Another example. Let's say a slide lists the pros and cons of a new product feature. A bullet point list is fine, but it's not particularly compelling. A much better approach might be to use a simple visual comparison. You could have 2 columns, one for pros with a green header and an upward pointing arrow, and another for cons with a red header and a downward pointing arrow. Under each header, you can use simple icons to represent the points. A $sign for cost, a clock for time saved, a broken chain for a risk. This visual separation makes the comparison immediately obvious and easier to digest. It also adds a subtle layer of emotional context. Green feels good, red feels bad, that a bullet point list simply can't convey. The biggest challenge and a valid critique of this approach is that it seems to simplify complex topics, and to some extent it does. But the purpose of a presentation is not to dump every single piece of data onto your audience. It's to get them to understand a key message. The details, the nuance, the raw data, those belong in a supporting document or an appendix. The presentation itself should be a high-level narrative. You're telling a story, and the visuals are the illustrations. A good presentation, therefore, is likely a combination of compelling visuals and a speaker who can fill in the details with their words. It's a dance between the two. This also applies to data. A table full of numbers is difficult to read and even harder to remember, but a simple bar chart, a line graph, or a pie chart can tell a story at a glance. You can show the growth of sales over time with a line graph, and the audience immediately sees the trend. You can show market share with a pie chart, and they instantly understand the proportion. Don't make your audience do the work of interpreting the data. Do the work for them and present it in a way that is immediately understandable. This appears to reduce the cognitive load and allows the audience to focus on what the data means, not just what the data is. Ultimately, turning text into visuals is about respect for your audience. It shows that you've put in the effort to make the information accessible and easy to understand. It signals that you value their attention and their time. Reports, like presentations, have a reputation for being long, boring, and difficult to get through. A thick report filled with text is a bit of a psychological barrier. We see it, and our brain says, okay, this is going to be a slog. But reports don't have to be this way. They can be a powerful medium for communicating complex information, and visual elements are the key to making them so. A great way to start is with a visual executive summary. Instead of a page of dense paragraphs, you can create a single-page visual summary that uses icons, charts, and diagrams to convey the main points. This summary acts as an invitation to the rest of the report. It gives the reader a high-level overview of the content and the key takeaways, allowing them to decide what they want to read in more detail. A good visual summary might have a timeline of the project, a chart showing the key metrics, and simple icons representing the main recommendations. It's a way of saying, here's the gist of it. Now, if you want the details, they're on page 37. It's a gesture that acknowledges the reader's busy schedule. Another technique is to use visuals to break up the text. A long, uninterrupted block of text is intimidating. But if you insert a diagram, a chart, or even a photograph every few pages, it creates a visual rhythm. It gives the reader's eye a place to rest and a new way to engage with the material. This isn't just about making the report look pretty. It's about helping the reader maintain focus and interest. When you're writing a report, you should also think about creating visual metaphors for key concepts. Let's say your report is about the company's new strategic direction. You could use a simple compass icon with the cardinal directions labeled with your key pillars, e.g., North for market expansion, East for product innovation. This is a quick and memorable way to summarize a complex strategy. The reader can instantly grasp the core idea, and the visual metaphor will stick in their mind long after they finished reading. Similarly, diagrams and flowcharts are incredibly useful for explaining processes or systems. A written description of a complex process can be confusing and hard to follow, but a simple flowchart makes it crystal clear. Instead of writing, first, the customer submits a request, then the request is routed to a manager for approval, and then a notification is sent. You can just draw it. A box for customer request, an arrow to a manager approval decision diamond, and then arrows leading to different outcomes. It's a much more efficient and effective way to communicate complex instructions. And of course, data visualizations are essential. If you have a report full of spreadsheets and tables, you're missing a huge opportunity. A table of numbers doesn't tell a story. A chart does. You can show the growth of your customer base over a year with a line graph, and the reader immediately sees the trend. You can show the breakdown of your sales by region with a bar chart, and they instantly understand which region is most important. These visualizations don't just present data, they present insights. They help the reader see the patterns and trends that might be hidden in a spreadsheet. One subtle critique of this approach is that it can be a way to hide a lack of substance. It's true that a report with a lot of charts and diagrams, but little meaningful data or analysis is just a pretty shell. The goal is not to replace the substance with visuals, but to use visuals to make the substance more accessible. The words and the pictures must work together. The visuals should be a guide to the text, a way of illuminating the key points and making the argument more compelling. When used correctly, visuals don't just make a report look better, they make it better. They make it clearer, more memorable, and more impactful. Welcome back. For this lesson, we're going to put our visual thinking skills to work in a very personal way. We'll be applying everything we've learned to personal productivity and goal setting. This isn't about making your to-do lists prettier. It's about using visuals to gain clarity, maintain motivation, and ultimately achieve what you set out to do. We'll talk about visualizing personal goals and progress and how to use visual planners and trackers. This is where we stop just thinking about visuals and start using them to shape our lives. Setting goals is easy, keeping them is hard. A lot of people write down their goals and then promptly forget about them, or they lose the initial spark of motivation and fall back into old habits. This happens because a goal written on a piece of paper or typed into a note app is just a collection of words. It doesn't engage our brain's powerful visual processing centers. By turning our goals into something we can see, we make them more real, more tangible, and more compelling. It's like the difference between hearing a description of a beautiful place and seeing a stunning photograph of it. The photograph has a much greater impact. One of the simplest yet most powerful ways to visualize a goal is to create a vision board. A vision board is a collage of images, words, and objects that represent your goals and aspirations. The idea is to create a visual representation of the future you want for yourself. You can use magazine cutouts, printed images, or even small objects. Let's say your goal is to travel more. You might put pictures of places you want to visit, like a bustling market in Morocco or a serene beach in Bali. If you're hoping to get a new job, you might include images of the company's logo, the type of work you want to do, or a picture of a well-organized office. The beauty of a vision board is that there's no right or wrong way to make one. It's a personal, intuitive process. A lot of people are a little skeptical about vision boards, and I get that. They can feel a bit mystical, but there's a solid psychological reason they appear to work. By creating and regularly looking at your vision board, you're engaging in a form of priming. You're repeatedly exposing your mind to images of your desired future. This is likely to influence your subconscious mind and make you more alert to opportunities that align with your goals. For example, if you have a picture of a specific car you want, you might start to notice that car everywhere. This doesn't mean the universe is suddenly conspiring to give you that car, but it does mean you're more aware of it. In the same way, visualizing your goals makes you more aware of the steps and opportunities needed to achieve them. It's not magic, it's a form of active mindfulness. Another powerful visualization technique for goals is the goal pyramid or tree. This method is particularly useful for breaking down a big, overwhelming goal into smaller, manageable pieces. You can draw a large pyramid or a central trunk of a tree and label it with your ultimate goal, say, start a business. From the top of the pyramid or the trunk, you can then draw out branches or layers. The next layer might be the major milestones. Develop a business plan, secure funding, and launch product. From each of those milestones, you can draw even smaller branches for the individual tasks needed to complete them. For example, under Develop a Business Plan, you might have market research, financial projections, and Write Executive Summary. This visual structure makes a daunting goal feel much more approachable. You can see the entire project at a glance, and you can also see the specific, concrete steps you need to take right now. The critique of a single, highly structured diagram is that it may suggest a linear path that life rarely follows. A more fluid approach, such as a goal constellation map, can sometimes be more appropriate. In this map, your main goal is in the center, but the steps to get there are a series of interconnected nodes around it. The lines between the nodes don't have to be a straight path. You can draw arrows that loop back or that skip a step to reflect the reality that progress is rarely a straight line. This approach might feel a bit more honest and less rigid, which could be less discouraging if you hit a setback. It acknowledges that there are many ways to reach a goal. Tracking your progress visually is just as important as visualizing the goal itself. A simple progress bar is a classic for a reason. If your goal is to save $10,000, you can draw a long bar and color in a portion of it each time you save a significant amount. A visual tracker like this provides a tangible sense of accomplishment, which can be a huge motivator. It's a way of celebrating the small wins along the way. Seeing that bar slowly fill up can provide a much-needed boost on days when you feel like you're not making any headway. Beyond visualizing long-term goals, visual thinking can be a game changer for day-to-day productivity. Traditional to-do lists, while useful, can feel flat and uninspiring. Visual planners and trackers, on the other hand, turn the act of planning and doing into a more engaging and even creative process. It feels less like a chore and more like a personal project. One of the most popular visual planning methods is the bullet journal, or Buyo for short. While it can be a simple system of symbols, many people use it as a creative outlet. A bullet journal can include visual spreads for anything you want to track: habits, moods, books you've read, or project timelines. For example, you could draw a simple calendar grid for the month and color in a square. Each day you stick to a new habit, like meditating or exercising. This creates a visual record of your consistency, and seeing a long streak of colored squares can be incredibly motivating. It's a physical, visual representation of your discipline. The beauty of the bullet journal is its flexibility. You can create a tracker for anything you want, and it's all in one place. Another great tool is the Kanban board. Kanban, which is Japanese for visual signal, is a system for managing work that originated at Toyota. While it's used in many businesses, it's also perfect for personal use. A simple Kanban board has 3 columns: to do, doing, and done. You write each task on a sticky note and place it in the to-do column. When you start working on a task, you move the sticky note to doing. When you finish, you move it to done. The physical act of moving the note from one column to the next provides a small but satisfying sense of progress. It makes your work visible and helps you limit the amount of work you have in progress at any one time, which can reduce feelings of being overwhelmed. The critique here is that it can feel a little rigid for creative or less defined tasks, but for concrete actions, it's remarkably effective. For those who feel overwhelmed by a long list of tasks, a visual priority matrix can be incredibly helpful. The most well-known is the Eisenhower matrix, which divides tasks into 4 quadrants: urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. You can draw this simple 2x2 grid and place your tasks in the appropriate quadrant. This simple visualization provides instant clarity on what you should be working on. You can immediately see the tasks that are both urgent and important, and you can also see the time-wasting tasks that are neither. A quick glance at the matrix can recenter you when you feel lost in a sea of busy work. Finally, a less structured but still powerful approach is to use a visual journal for daily or weekly reflection. This isn't about planning, but about looking back. At the end of the day or week, you can sketch out a quick diagram of what you accomplished. Maybe you draw a simple mind map of the key ideas you had in a meeting, a flowchart of a difficult conversation you had, or a quick doodle of a successful moment. This acts as a visual diary of your progress and insights. It's a way of making your thoughts and experiences concrete, which can help you learn from them and feel a greater sense of momentum. It's a nice way of counteracting the feeling that days and weeks just disappear into a blur. The great thing about all these visual tools is that they are highly personal. You don't have to follow any system perfectly, you can mix and match. You might use a Kanban board for your work tasks, a bullet journal for your personal habits, and a vision board for your big life goals. The point isn't to stick to a rigid system, it's to find a visual method that works for you, that helps you see your goals, your progress, and your life with greater clarity. It's a way of engaging your brain on its own terms, and the results can be pretty surprising. Welcome back! We've covered a lot of ground in this course. We've explored the theory behind visual thinking, applied it to problem solving, and used it to communicate in groups. Now, in this final lesson, we're going to talk about the practical stuff, the tools and resources that can help you on your visual thinking journey. We'll look at the pros and cons of both old school analog tools and modern digital tools. We'll finish up with a brief look at some places where you can continue your learning and connect with others who are passionate about this stuff. Before we get into the fancy apps and software, let's talk about the absolute essentials. The tools that have been around for a very, very long time. I'm talking about pens, paper, and whiteboards. These are your foundational tools, and frankly, they're the best place to start. There's a certain magic to the simplicity and immediacy of putting a pen to paper. You don't have to worry about a battery dying, a software update, or an internet connection. It's just you and your ideas. A simple pen and a notebook are your most accessible tools. You can carry them anywhere, and they're always ready to go. The physical act of drawing and writing by hand appears to engage our brains in a way that typing can't quite replicate. Some research suggests that the tactile feedback of a pen on paper helps with memory retention and idea generation. There's a subtle but powerful connection between the hand and the mind that's hard to ignore. A simple lined notebook is fine, but I've found that a blank or dotted notebook is even better, as it gives you more freedom to draw without the constraints of lines. My personal preference is a notebook with a dot grid. It gives you a little guidance for drawing straight lines or making neat boxes without getting in the way of a more fluid sketch. Then there are sticky notes, which are a bit of a revolution in their own right. They are like physical pixels that you can move around. You can write one idea per note, and then you can group them, rearrange them, and discard them. This is an incredibly powerful way to visualize your thoughts and to collaborate with others. It's the cornerstone of techniques like affinity diagramming and Kanban boards. The physical, movable nature of sticky notes seems to make our brains more comfortable with the idea of a work in progress. It's a low-stakes way to organize thoughts. If a grouping doesn't work, you just peel the notes off the wall and try again. And of course, there are whiteboards. The great thing about a whiteboard is its sheer size. It gives you a huge canvas to work on, which is great for group brainstorming or mapping out a complex project. The ability to draw, erase, and redraw with a simple swipe of an eraser makes it perfect for iterative thinking. You're not committed to your first idea or your second or your third. A good whiteboard with a few different colored markers is all you really need for a productive session. A potential critique, however, is that analog tools can be a bit messy. You can't easily save and share your work, and you can't undo a mistake with the click of a button. Once you erase it, it's gone. This can be a good thing, as it encourages you to be present, but it can also be frustrating when you want to preserve your work. As much as I love analog tools, there's no denying the power and convenience of digital ones. They offer some things that a pen and paper just can't, like the ability to easily edit, save, share, and collaborate remotely. They're not a replacement for analog tools, but rather a powerful complement. For simple sketching and mind mapping, a basic drawing app on a tablet or a computer can be great. Apps like Concepts, Procreate, or even the built-in drawing tools on an iPad are fantastic for just getting your ideas down. They give you a variety of pens, brushes, and colors to work with, and the ability to undo a mistake is a lifesaver. You can sketch out an idea, save it as an image, and send it to a colleague in seconds. This is particularly useful for those of us who find ourselves thinking visually even when we're not in a meeting room. The ability to pull out my tablet and start sketching a quick flowchart or a new idea in a coffee shop is pretty neat. For more structured work, like process flows, system maps, or detailed diagrams, diagramming software is probably the way to go. Tools like Miro, Mural, and Figma have become incredibly popular in recent years, especially with the rise of remote work. They are essentially digital whiteboards on steroids. You can have multiple people working on the same canvas at the same time, seeing each other's changes in real time. They have built-in shapes, icons, and templates that make creating professional-looking diagrams much easier. These tools really shine in a collaborative setting. A team in different cities can brainstorm and organize ideas together as if they were in the same room, which is a game changer. However, a word of caution, these digital tools can sometimes feel a bit overwhelming. They have so many features that it's easy to get lost in the details and to forget that the point is to think, not just to make something look pretty. A person with a great idea on a napkin is more effective than a person with a bad idea on a beautifully formatted digital diagram. It's important to remember that the tool is just that, a tool. The skill is what matters. A subtle critique is that these tools, with all their features, might sometimes encourage us to overcomplicate things. It's easy to get caught up in moving a box or changing a color when you should really be focusing on the core idea. My advice? Start with the simplest digital tool you can find and only add more complexity when you absolutely need it. Your journey into visual thinking doesn't end here. This course is just the beginning. The best way to get better at this is to practice, of course, but also to learn from others and to find your community. There are a ton of great resources out there to help you continue your learning. One of the best places to start is with books. There are some classics in this space that I highly recommend. Dan Rome's The Back of the Napkin is a fantastic place to start. It's an accessible and engaging introduction to the power of visual thinking. Another great one is Suni Brown's The Doodle Revolution, which champions the power of doodling as a serious cognitive tool. For those interested in graphic recording, a book like Brandy Agerbeck's The Graphic Facilitator's Guide is a must-read. The internet is also a treasure trove of resources. There are countless blogs, YouTube channels, and online courses dedicated to visual thinking, graphic facilitation, and information design. A simple search on any of these platforms will likely turn up more information than you could ever get through. But perhaps the most valuable resource of all is the community. There are a lot of people who are passionate about visual thinking, and connecting with them can be incredibly inspiring. You can find visual thinking groups on social media platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook. There are also professional organizations like the International Forum of Visual Practitioners, IFVP, which holds conferences and provides a network for people who use visuals in their work. I found that seeing how others approach a problem visually, or just talking to them about their process, can open up my own thinking in ways I wouldn't have imagined. The thing is, visual thinking isn't a single rigid discipline. It's a skill, and like any skill, it gets better with practice and with learning from others. So go out there, grab a pen or open an app and start putting your thoughts into pictures. The world is waiting to see what you have to say. Good luck and have fun.